Hey now! What is up, everybody? My name is Mike Brown, aka Review King MB, and Smallville Rewind. This is season 2, and it's episode 5, I believe. It's entitled Nocturne. And this is a very interesting episode. So, at the beginning, we see Lana visiting her parents' grave, and I feel like it's been a while since we've seen Lana visiting her parents' grave. It's something that she did a few times in season 1, and we seemingly haven't seen it. But she's back, and maybe it has something to do with the relationship with Clark dissolving, lack of relationship. So she's feeling sad, and somebody leaves her a note. And it's not just a regular note, it's a note with an envelope that has one of those old-timey, old-fashioned imprints on the back of it. And so the guy runs off. Lana can barely see him. He gets knocked out by, we later find out, is his father. He gets shot, which we're like, what the fuck? But it's tranquilizers. The father brings this kid back home, locks him in the basement, and says, "Don't you dare escape ever again." And you're like, what the fuck? This is super ultra mega dark. Now, the father, I want to mention, he's credited as Mr. Moore. He is played by Richard Mole. I think I'm saying that last name right. I actually found this out through a subscriber, Gamerman. He sent me this information, this bit of trivia, that this actor, Richard Mole, is actually a well-known voice actor. He played Harvey Dent, Two-Face, in Batman the Animated Series, which is a pretty big deal for me. I love that show. I love that version of Two-Face. And seeing this guy, I mean, if I didn't know that, I probably wouldn't have thought much of the role. He's just the angry father, and he gets a few scenes, and that's it. But to have that context going in, it was pretty cool to see this guy. I mean, I don't think I've ever even seen his face before. Also, apparently, he worked with John Schneider in Dukes of Hazzard, which is quite hilarious. And he doesn't have a scene, sadly. Actually, he does. They do have the one scene when the Kents and the cop go to the house looking for the son. It's so brief, though, that I almost didn't realize it. So they do interact. That is pretty cool. So the note that the kid left for Lana, it's this really lovey-dovey, sappy, poetry type deal. And she's a little smitten by it. You see the next day in school, she's showing Pete, she's showing Chloe. It's kind of funny that Lana doesn't have any other friends besides the same friends that Clark has. And when Clark sees what's going on, he sort of like wanders over and says, "Hey, what's going on here?" "Oh, Lana got a love note. Here, Clark, read it." And Lana's just sitting there like, "What the fuck, Chloe?" Like, I'm not talking to Clark right now. Fuck that dude. But hey, this also can get Clark jealous, so she lets him read it. And Clark reads it, and he just kind of goes like, "Man, this is a bit much." And Lana makes a crack of like, "Oh, I forgot. The Man of Steel over here." Like, no emotions. But of course, the Man of Steel reference, I appreciated that. Clark didn't even know what to say because, in a way, she's right. He doesn't know how to reveal his feelings, talk about his feelings, show his emotions. And you even see at the Talon, somehow, like, Lana just has the note lying out there on the counter. So Lex comes over. Lex reads the note. And even Lex sort of is like, who is this by? This is super, like, sophisticated and mature. And then Lex recites poetry to Lana. And Lana is very surprised and taken aback by Lex knowing poetry, also having that level of interest. And Lex makes a remark basically saying, "Oh, well, I think we just figured out Lana's Achilles heel. That basically, if you know poetry, you have an instant in." And I thought to myself, is Lex kind of sort of maybe hitting on Lana? Because that's weird. Like, she's still in high school. Lex is in his 20s. I don't know how to feel about that. Now, maybe not. Maybe I just misread the scene. If you guys thought the same thing or not, let me know. Clark, of course, shows up, and Clark is still trying to apologize to Lana, trying to explain things. And when Clark says, I just wish that you would have come to me with this note instead of Pete and Chloe. And Lana had a great response. For people that hate Lana, I was on her side for most of this episode, where she says, how do you expect me to be so open with you when you can't be open with me? Ding, ding, ding. It's over. Like, end of the rounds. You can't come back from that, because even though, yes, Clark may have his reasons, his good reasons for keeping his secret and blah, 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 he can't expect to be in a relationship with Lana. He can't expect to have full, complete trust both ways with Lana if he's not willing to tell her. And I think she's right. And I think Clark needs to man the fuck up. I don't know why I'm starting to get fed up with Clark keeping the secret from her. I definitely think Lana, by now, by season 2, should have been told by Clark the secret. Speaking of interesting sort of plots that I didn't see coming, Lionel is sort of, I guess, interviewing potential assistance for himself, especially because he's blind. He needs like extra care, extra assistance, and he's turning everybody down. And Lex questions him about it, and Lionel says, well, you have to be very particular. Like, this is important. I can't just hire anybody. And then he happens to have a chance interaction with Martha Kent. Martha, I guess, they established this in the first season, but it's kind of funny to find out that this is still the case, where Lex and Martha have this arrangement where she picks up produce, for him or whatever the fuck. I don't know. So she goes there, and it's not there, and Lionel's there, and they talk, and Lionel is immediately like, I like you, Martha. Like, you're intelligent, you know what you're doing. I want to hire you as my assistant. And then Martha goes back to Jonathan and basically says, hey, guess what I just got sort of asked to do? And Jonathan is not for this at all. He does not like her being around Lionel or working with the Luthors. He doesn't trust it. He thinks it's skeevy. And I kind of understand it. I mean, Martha tried to make it more about like, hey, I get to maybe go off and do something on my own. I went to school for something similar, communications. I don't really remember what she went to school for, but I guess it might pertain to this. It sounds like she just wants to be off this fucking farm. And even Jonathan made a remark about like, oh, I'm sorry, the farm's not good enough for you anymore. And she was like, no, it's not about that. We need the money, this and that. And maybe they do need the money. And so Martha does take the job. Pretty crazy. Now, Lana is back at the cemetery. And this kid, we find out his name is Byron. So Byron is standing directly behind her. You can't tell me he was trying to be inconspicuous or he was trying to hide. He was standing out in the open. She turns and sees him and he starts to run away. I'm like, motherfucker, you wanted her to see you. Stop lying. So she says, hey, wait, stop. I read your poem. It was great. It was beautiful. And he stops and he goes, you really think so? Ooh. This pretty girl likes my writing. And then he's talking to her, and then Clark just happens to be there. Of course. And Clark's like, hey, get away from her. And Byron runs and falls, or I think maybe even Clark pushes him off of Lana. He falls and hit his head off of a tombstone, and he's bleeding, and he passes out. And instead of taking him to the hospital, they take him to the Talon just for him to wake up, and he's like, oh, how long has it been? Passage of time. Oh no, I hope my parents aren't awake. And he runs off. And if you're Lana, it's like, okay, this kid, sure, he writes good poetry, but he's way too worried about his parents catching him. He I don't know, right? It just seems off. And they drive him back home, which I'm surprised he even let them do. And he's running into the home. The parents come out. The father is like with a shotgun. It's like, I told you, boy, not to leave again. And Clark sees the gun and says, holy shit. They leave the car and they confront the parents. And the father says, fuck you. I'll shoot you for trespassing. And so then Clark and Lana go to the Kents. And it's a funny moment when the Kents look at Clark and Lana come through the door. And Jonathan says, have you two been out all night together? And Clark looks at Lana and he goes, it's not what you think. Just like, what did Jonathan think? Or what did Clark think Jonathan thought? That they were out having sex all night long and they're just now coming back? Like, it was just funny. He says, no, like we met somebody and we think he's being abused by his father. So they go there with the cop. This is the scene I was mentioning where Jonathan actually interacts with Richard Mole because they're questioning him about, like, where's your son? We need to see your son. And the parents go, he died 8 or 9 years ago. He drowned. So, sorry, can't happen. And thankfully Clark and Lana were both there. It wasn't just Clark by himself because I feel like usually it is just Clark by himself. Lana was also there, so the two of them saying, no, they're lying. We saw him last night, blah, blah, blah. And so that urges the cop to say, or the sheriff? That urges him to say, all right, I'm going to get a warrant. Clark, of course, doesn't want to wait for this warrant. So him and Pete go back to the house, which is 110% trespassing. Clark just like easily breaks one of the like wood pieces off of the window, I think. And it took me a second to be like, Clark, you just used your powers in front of Pete. Oh yeah, Pete knows. Yeah, it was so glaring. I'm not used to Clark openly using his powers in front of his friends. And so he does that. There's a dog that bites him in the arm, but it doesn't affect him, obviously. The dog is even like, oh shit, that hurt my mouth or my teeth. The dog was like, sorry, I didn't realize whatever steel skin you had going on. They go in there, they find Byron, he's chained up. Oh my god, they release him. And as soon as Byron leaves, which Byron should have said, no, motherfuckers, I can't leave this house. I can't go into the sunlight because I'm a fucking werewolf or a vampire or a reverse vampire. I'm not quite sure what he was. Maybe there is a name. There is a type of animal. Maybe it has to do with Nocturne. I don't know. I'm not well versed enough for that. But when he goes into the light, his eyes go black. His face, the shape changes. I swear, it's a cross between a vampire and a werewolf. And he freaks out. He shoves Clark away. He shoves Pete into the car. Pete goes to the hospital. I guess he's fine. And then now the son is loose, right? The beast is loose. And Lana wants to find Byron because she thinks she can help him. There was a moment, I don't know if it's here or if it was earlier in the episode, where Clark is talking to Lana about how, like, it's kind of creepy how this guy is stalking you or watching you from far away. Isn't it creepy? And Lana's like, Clark, don't tell me that you've never watched somebody from afar. Which made me think, oh, so Lana knows that Clark watches her probably from his barn with that telescope, right? I mean, I know there was that one episode where she went to the barn and she saw the telescope and she sort of mentioned, like, you can see my house from here. And she made a face, but she never addressed it further than that. This is like more proof of, like, Clark, I know you've been spying on me. What the fuck? And so Lana goes and she finds Byron at the cemetery, and he's still like werewolfed out. I say werewolf, like he's not furry, it's not that overt, but he does look off. He does look strange. And you could tell he's more aggressive. He's telling her to stay away from him. I was actually waiting for the Michael Jackson Thriller moment when he was crouched over and like Lana goes to touch his shoulder. I was waiting for him to be like, get away! His eyes are yellow. But that didn't happen. He does, though, grab Lana. And he, like, throws her across, and she smacks her head against the uh, the tombstone, and I'm like, holy fuck. So she's knocked out. He runs off. I think there was a conversation too where Lana explained to him that like, oh, this was done to you from an experiment from the Luther Corp, and maybe we can find a cure. He's like, there is no cure. So then he runs off and finds Lionel Luthor's helicopter. Lionel and Martha are about to go somewhere, and he grabs a hold of the helicopter. This was a pretty cool effect where he's grabbing it, using his strength to force it back down on the ground. He grabs Martha, which, why did you say that name? And he throws her down, so Clark super speeds in before he can do something to Lionel. He even says to Lionel, Byron does, that like, you did this to me, now you have to pay. And Lionel's like, what? Because he's blind, so he doesn't know what the fuck's going on. And clearly Lionel doesn't even know what any of this is. Clark grabs him. They have sort of a quick fight, and they fall down a well. I guess there's a well on the Luthor Mansion grounds, and while they're down there, because they're out of the sunlight, they're in the darkness, they're struggling a little bit, and then Byron's face starts to go back to normal. His eyes leave black and go back, and he's like, Clark? You know, he has no memory of what just happened. I guess he's the Hulk. And we cut to Byron's in the hospital, and he's in like a regular hospital. No, Byron needs to go to some weird lab, Cadmus, or where's Amanda Waller to find this dude, because Byron's not normally, whatever's wrong with him is next level. They need to figure that shit out. Why is he just in the regular hospital? That's wild. That's crazy. Why is Clark and Lana able to be in there? Why aren't there government agents blocking the doors off and saying, no, we're going to figure this shit out? But no, they're just there talking to Byron, and Lana says something along the lines of, I'm sorry I made things worse, blah, blah, blah. Her wrist was broken, maybe? And then Byron says, hey, can I see your hand? And she gives him her hand. And then Byron just starts like holding her hand and smiling at her. And Clark is standing there like, what the fuck? Looking around like, this is awkward as fuck. So Clark leaves. I felt bad for Clark. I'm like, God damn, this is awkward. Being the third wheel, especially in high school, sucks. So we get one last scene of Martha as Lionel's assistant. She's taking care of everything. She's professional. She's efficient. She has his schedule packed and ready. And Lex kind of sees all this. And Lex makes a remark about, it's almost like Lex is aware that Lionel is attracted to Martha. And he's like, be careful, father, or you're going to get distracted in some other ways. And Lionel just smirks. Lionel's not denying that maybe there's something going on there. And I always found Lionel and Martha's weird relationship weird. Like what exactly is going on there? Cut to Lana goes to the barn, or not the barn. It's actually just the farm. Clark is doing farm work. Clark is lucky that Lana didn't show up when Clark usually uses his powers when he does farm work. He's usually super speeding. He's usually picking up 1,000-pound things, like stuff, right? But no, he's not doing anything of that sort. He's just kind of doing stuff. And Lana goes up to him and says, hey, you disappeared last night. And Clark's like, yeah, well, I figured you wanted to be alone with Byron. Clark very subtle with his jealousy. And Lana notices that the back of Clark's pants, his pocket, he has a book of sonnets. Poetry. It made me think of the scene in Spider-Man 2 when Peter Parker is trying to learn poetry for Mary Jane. Day by day, he gazed upon her. It would be hilarious if Clark tried to recite that. Because the writers of Spider-Man 2 are the same two showrunners of Smallville. But Lana says to Clark, or she asks him, hey, what did you think of these, of the poems? And Clark says, you know what? It's not for me. And she appreciated his honesty. She was like, Finally, an honest response. Thank you. So it's not that Lana needed him to be super poetic or super romantic in that way. She's tired of the lies. He was honest. And then Clark says something like, so you're okay with Byron being different or weird or whatever? And she's like, no, like it's fine, you know. She just was more worried about when she was endangered, and she thought of Clark. And I liked when Clark said, maybe keeping a part of you hidden is more for protection and more like, what if it's too dangerous? And Lana says something very interesting. She says, well, you just might be missing out on something amazing. And she sort of smiled at him. And one thing is, I like that they started this episode continuing the friction that they had at the end of Red, because Lana has the right to be upset still with Clark. So I like that through line. I like that Clark kind of had to earn her friendship back, or whatever this is. But I also like the fact that that's her basically saying, hey, if you want to date me, we need to figure this shit out. We need to get past whatever you're lying about. You need to be more upfront with me. Like, she can't be more direct about it. And so I guess maybe that's why I'm a little frustrated with Clark of like, man, bro, just tell her. I know it might go horribly wrong. I know it might not work out. But it's not worth being this upset over her talking to anybody else. Being this upset over her being upset with you for keeping lies. Like, there's too much baggage here. And I don't remember how soon or how much longer before. I mean, I know Lana's not going to find out anytime soon. But I know that they date before then. So I don't know how that works. How they date without him telling her. I did enjoy this episode, though. I don't love the episodes that are so Freak of the Week based. Like, when I saw this character, this Nocturne character, I kind of rolled my eyes like, I could do without this. But I always like the surrounding stuff around it. I always like how these Meteor Freak stories inform the through lines that go forward. Let me know what you thought of Nocturne. If you liked it, if you loved it, if you didn't like it. What do you think of Clark and Lana's whatever this is? Thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. Later!